It was a Tuesday morning when she first noticed something wasn't quite right. The sun was just starting to peek over the trees in Riverside Park, and she was doing her usual morning jog round the track. Everything seemed normal at first. The birds were chirping, a few early dog walkers were out, and the morning air felt fresh and cool against her skin. But then she saw her, a woman sitting on the wooden bench near the old water fountain, holding a steaming coffee cup in both hands. She looked to be about 30 years old, maybe a bit younger, with reddish-brown hair that barely touched her shoulders. What caught her attention wasn't the woman's appearance, though. It was the way she was staring. The woman's eyes were fixed on her, following every step she took round the track. When she jogged past the first time, she thought maybe it was just a coincidence. People sit in parks all the time, and sometimes they look round at other people. Nothing weird about that, right? But when she came round the track for her second lap, those same eyes were still watching. And on the third lap, the woman had actually turned her whole body to get a better view. That's when she started to feel a little uncomfortable. She tried to shake it off. Maybe the woman was just bored, or maybe she was waiting for someone and had nothing else to look at. She decided to focus on her workout and ignore the strange feeling in her stomach. The next morning, she almost didn't want to go to the park, but she had been jogging there for over a year, and she wasn't about to let one weird encounter change her routine. She laced up her running shoes and headed out, hoping yesterday had just been a one-time thing. It wasn't. The same woman was there, sitting on the exact same bench, with the same coffee cup in her hands. And just like before, her eyes followed every movement. This time, she noticed something else. The woman had a small notebook in her lap, and she seemed to be writing things down. About her. Her heart started beating faster. And it wasn't from the exercise. Who writes notes about a stranger jogging in a park? What could she possibly be writing? She tried to peek at the notebook as she ran by, but the woman quickly closed it and held it against her chest. By the end of the week, she knew this wasn't just some random occurrence. Every single morning, the woman was there. Rain or shine, cold or warm. She would arrive at the park right around 6:30 and position herself where she could see the entire jogging track. She started paying more attention to the woman's behavior. The woman would arrive about 10 minutes before she usually started her workout, which meant she somehow knew her schedule. She would sit there with her coffee and notebook, watching and writing. Sometimes she would even move to different benches to get different angles. It was getting really weird. She began to dread her morning runs. The park had always been her peaceful escape, her time to clear her head and start the day right. Now, it felt like she was putting on a show for an audience she never asked for. Every stretch, every speed change, every water break, it was all being watched and recorded. The woman never tried to talk to her or approach her. She just sat there, observing like she was studying some kind of science experiment. It made her skin crawl. One morning, she decided to test something. Instead of doing her usual routine, she changed everything up. She started with jumping jacks instead of stretching, ran in the opposite direction around the track, and even did some exercises she had never tried before. The woman noticed immediately. She could see her scribbling furiously in that little notebook, clearly trying to keep up with all the changes. This confirmed her worst fears. She was definitely being studied, documented, and probably followed. She started looking over her shoulder more often, both in the park and on her way home. Was this woman following her to other places too? Did she know where she lived, where she worked? The questions kept spinning in her mind, making her feel anxious and paranoid. Her friends noticed the change in her mood. She had always been the type of person who looked forward to her morning exercise. But now she seemed stressed and distracted. When they asked what was wrong, she wasn't sure how to explain it without sounding crazy. "There's this woman who watches me jog every morning," she would say, and her friends would give her confused looks. Maybe she's just enjoying the park too, they would suggest. Or perhaps she's thinking about starting to exercise herself. But they weren't there. They couldn't see the intensity in the woman's eyes, or the way she moved around to get better viewing angles. or how she wrote in that mysterious notebook. They couldn't feel the uncomfortable weight of being constantly observed. The situation was affecting her sleep too. She would lie in bed at night, wondering what tomorrow morning would bring. Would the woman be there again? What was she writing about? Was this some kind of threat, or just really strange behavior? She had worked so hard to build this healthy morning routine, and now it felt like it was being ruined by someone she didn't even know. The park that used to represent freedom and energy now felt like a stage where she was forced to perform for an unwanted audience. Something had to change, but she wasn't sure what to do about it. 3 weeks had passed since she first noticed the woman watching her, and things were getting much worse. What had started as an uncomfortable feeling was now turning into something that kept her awake at night. The woman was no longer trying to hide what she was doing. She would arrive at the park even earlier now, sometimes getting there before the sun had fully risen. She had started bringing a small folding chair instead of just using the bench, which meant she could position herself anywhere she wanted for the best view. And she was definitely getting the best view. The woman had figured out her entire routine. She knew exactly when she would arrive, which stretches she would do first, how many laps she usually ran, and even which water fountain she preferred to use. It was like she had memorized every detail of her workout schedule. But the most disturbing part was how the woman had started moving around during her exercise session. She would start at one spot, then after a few minutes, she would pack up her chair and notebook and move to a completely different location. Sometimes she would position herself near the track, other times by the trees. And occasionally she would even climb up on the small hill that overlooked the entire park. It felt like she was being filmed by a camera crew, except there was only one person with a notebook instead of cameras. The notebook had gotten bigger too. What used to be a small leather journal was now a thick binder with multiple sections. She could see the woman flipping through different pages, sometimes going back to earlier entries, sometimes starting fresh pages. What could she possibly be writing that required so much space? One morning, she decided to arrive earlier than usual, hoping to catch the woman off guard or maybe even see what she was writing. She got to the park at 6 o'clock instead of her usual 6:30, thinking she would finally have some peace. But the woman was already there. She was sitting in her folding chair, notebook ready, coffee steaming in the morning air. When she saw her arrive early, the woman actually smiled and waved, like they were old friends meeting for a planned get-together. That smile made her stomach turn. It was friendly, almost excited, like the woman was genuinely happy to see her. But there was something else in that smile, something that made her feel like she was walking into a trap she didn't understand. She tried changing her routine even more dramatically. Instead of jogging, she tried walking. Instead of her usual path, she used the trails on the far side of the park. She even tried doing yoga on the grass instead of any running at all. None of it mattered. The woman followed her everywhere within the park, always maintaining what seemed like a carefully calculated distance, not too close to be obvious, but not too far to miss any details. She was like a shadow that had learned to think and move on its own. The worst part was how the woman had started to anticipate her movements. If she headed toward the water fountain, the woman would already be packing up her chair to move to a spot with a better view of the fountain area. If she looked like she was getting ready to leave, the woman would start gathering her things. It was like she was living inside someone else's mind, and that person had been studying her every move for weeks. She started taking different routes home, hoping to lose the woman or at least confirm whether she was being followed outside the park too. The first few times, she didn't see anyone behind her, and she thought maybe the woman's interest was limited to the park itself. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. She had finished her workout and was walking toward the park exit when she got the strange feeling that she wasn't alone. She turned around and saw the woman about half a block behind her, walking in the same direction. When she turned, the woman quickly looked away and pretended to be interested in a store window. Her heart started racing faster than it ever had during exercise. This wasn't just park observation anymore. This was following her home, she decided. To test it, instead of taking her usual route, she turned left instead of right when she reached the main street. She could see the woman in the reflection of store windows, still behind her. Still maintaining that same careful distance, she took another left turn, then another, making a complete circle around the block. The woman stayed with her the entire time, sometimes stopping to look at her phone or pretend to tie her shoe when the distance between them got too small. By the time she had walked 6 blocks in a zigzag pattern through her neighborhood, there was no doubt about what was happening. She was being followed, studied, and probably tracked in ways she couldn't even imagine. When she finally made it to her apartment building, she ran up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, then immediately went to her window to look down at the street. The woman was standing on the corner, looking up at the building, still writing in that notebook. For the first time since this whole thing started, she felt genuinely scared. This wasn't just weird behavior anymore. This was something that could become dangerous. She double-checked her door locks, closed all her curtains, and spent the rest of the day trying to figure out what to do. That night, she barely slept. Every small sound made her jump. Every car that drove by made her peek through the curtains. She kept thinking about that friendly smile and wondering what it really meant. The next morning, she almost didn't go to the park at all. But she realized that staying home wouldn't solve anything. If this woman knew where she lived, avoiding the park wouldn't make her disappear. Something had to be done. But she wasn't sure what that something should be. She had spent the entire weekend thinking about what to do. Her friends had given her all sorts of advice. Some said to call the police. Others suggested just ignoring it completely. But deep down, she knew that neither of those options felt right. The police would probably say there wasn't enough evidence of any real crime. And ignoring it clearly wasn't working since the situation was getting worse every day. By Sunday night, she had made up her mind. She was going to confront the woman directly. Monday morning came faster than she wanted it to. She put on her workout clothes like usual, but her hands were shaking as she tied her shoes. She had practiced what she was going to say over and over in her head, but now that the moment was here, all those rehearsed words seemed to disappear. The walk to the park felt like it took forever. Every step brought her closer to a conversation she wasn't sure she was ready for. What if the woman denied everything? What if she got angry? What if she was actually dangerous? All these questions swirled around in her mind as she approached the park entrance. Sure enough, there she was. The woman was sitting in her usual spot with her folding chair, notebook open on her lap, coffee cup in her right hand. She looked so normal, so harmless, that for a moment she almost doubted herself. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe this was all just a big misunderstanding. But then she remembered the feeling of being followed home, the way the woman had looked up at her apartment building, and the months of constant observation. No, this wasn't normal, and it needed to stop. She took a deep breath and walked straight toward the woman instead of heading to the track. With each step, her heart beat faster. The woman looked up from her notebook with surprise, clearly not expecting this change in routine. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady even though her hands were trembling. "I need to talk to you." The woman's eyes went wide, like a deer caught in headlights. Her face turned bright red, and she clutched her notebook against her chest like it was something precious she needed to protect. What do you mean?" The woman stammered, though they both knew exactly what she meant. "I've noticed you watching me every morning for weeks," she continued, finding her courage as she spoke. "You follow me around the park, you write things about me in that notebook, and last week you even followed me home. I need to know what's going on." The woman's face went from red to completely pale. She looked down at her notebook, then back up, then down again. For a moment, it seemed like she might just get up and run away. "I'm so sorry," the woman finally whispered, her voice so quiet it was hard to hear. "I didn't mean to scare you. I really didn't." "Then why are you doing it?" she asked, sitting down on the bench next to the woman's chair. Something about the woman's reaction made her feel less afraid and more curious. The woman was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, Her eyes were filled with tears. "This is going to sound really strange," she said, her voice still shaking. "But I'm a personal trainer, and I've been watching you because you're amazing." "What do you mean?" she asked, completely confused by this turn in the conversation. "Your form, your dedication, your technique. Everything about how you exercise is perfect," the woman explained, her words coming out in a rush. "I've been a trainer for 2 years, but I'm still new to this city, and I don't have many clients yet. I've been too nervous to approach people directly, so I've been studying different people's workout routines from a distance." She stared at the woman, trying to process what she was hearing. "You've been studying me?" "I know how creepy that sounds," the woman said quickly, "but I was trying to work up the courage to ask if you might be interested in training together. I wanted to make sure I could actually help you before I introduced myself. I didn't want to waste your time if I couldn't offer you anything valuable." The woman opened her notebook and showed her the pages. Instead of scary personal information, it was filled with observations about exercise techniques, notes about different workout routines, and even some sketches of proper form for various exercises. "I've been writing down everything I've learned from watching you," the woman explained, "your breathing patterns, the way you pace yourself, how you modify exercises when you're tired. You do things that I've been trying to teach my clients for months." She looked through the notebook pages, seeing her own workout routine documented in careful detail. It was strange to see herself described this way, but it wasn't threatening. It was actually kind of flattering. "But why didn't you just come and talk to me instead of watching me for so long?" she asked out. The woman laughed nervously. "Because I'm terrible at talking to people. I moved here from a small town where everyone knew everyone, and big city life is really intimidating. I kept telling myself I would introduce myself tomorrow. Then tomorrow would come and I'd lose my nerve again. And following me home," the woman's face turned red again. "That was the day I had finally decided to talk to you. I was going to catch up and introduce myself. But then I started thinking about how weird it would be to approach someone on the street, so I followed you to see which direction you lived, thinking maybe I could figure out a more natural way to meet you, like at a coffee shop or something." She had to admit, it was a much more innocent explanation than anything she had imagined. The woman seemed genuinely embarrassed and sorry, not dangerous or threatening. "I'm really sorry," the woman said again. "I know I handled this completely wrong. I've never met anyone who approaches fitness the way you do. And I was excited about the possibility of learning from you and maybe helping you reach even bigger goals." For the first time in weeks, she felt herself relaxing. The knot in her stomach was finally starting to loosen. After their awkward conversation on the bench, she found herself in a situation she never expected. The woman who had been watching her for weeks was now sitting right next to her, nervously fidgeting with her notebook and looking like she wanted to disappear into the ground. "So you're a personal trainer," she said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "How long have you been doing that?" The woman looked up, seeming surprised that the conversation was continuing. "About 2 years now. I got my certification back in my hometown, but I moved here 6 months ago, and starting over in a new city is much harder than I thought it would be." She could hear the genuine frustration in the woman's voice. "What made you move here?" "Better opportunities, or at least that's what I thought," the woman replied with a small laugh. "In my small town, everyone knew I was the fitness girl, so getting clients was easy. Here, there are personal trainers everywhere, and I'm just another face in the crowd." Something about the woman's honesty made her feel more comfortable. She had been so focused on feeling scared and annoyed that she hadn't considered that maybe this person was struggling too. "You said you wanted to train together," she said slowly. "What exactly did you have in mind?" The woman's eyes lit up immediately. "Well, based on what I've observed, you have incredible natural ability. But I think there are some areas where we could really push your limits. Your cardio endurance is fantastic, but I notice you don't do much strength training, and your flexibility could use some work." She had to admit, the woman was right. She had always focused on running and basic exercises, but she had never really worked with weights or done serious stretching. Routines? I don't know, she said hesitantly. This whole situation is still pretty weird for me. I completely understand, the woman said quickly. Look, what if we just try one session? Right here in the park, where you're comfortable. If you hate it, or if you still feel uncomfortable around me, I'll leave you alone completely. I'll even find a different park to work out in. There was something about the woman's eagerness that was hard to resist. She had been working out alone for over a year, and the idea of having someone who actually knew what they were doing help her was appealing. One session, she agreed. But if this feels weird at all, I'm walking away. The woman practically bounced out of her chair. With excitement. Thank you. You won't regret this, I promise. Should we start now? She looked around the park. It was still early morning, and there were only a few other people around. I guess we could try a few things. What happened next completely changed her perspective on exercise. The woman started by watching her do her usual warm-up routine. But instead of just observing silently, she offered gentle suggestions. Try lifting your knees a little higher during those high knees, she said. And when you're doing those arm circles, focus on really stretching through your shoulder blades. The small adjustments made an immediate difference. She could feel muscles working that she hadn't even known existed. Then the woman introduced her to exercises she had never tried before. Instead of just running laps, they did interval training, short bursts of high-intensity running followed by recovery periods. Instead of basic stretches, they did dynamic movements that challenged her balance and coordination. How does that feel? The woman asked after they finished a set of exercises using a park bench for step-ups. In tricep dips, different, she admitted, breathing hard, harder than what I usually do, but in a good way. The woman smiled, a genuine, excited smile that was completely different from the awkward expression she had worn earlier. That's exactly what I was hoping for. You have such a strong foundation that we can build on. As they continued working out together, she started to understand why the woman had been so interested in her routine. The woman wasn't just knowledgeable about exercise, she was passionate about it. She could see how different movements worked different muscle groups, how to modify exercises for different fitness levels, and how to push someone just enough to challenge them without causing injury. Where did you learn all this? She asked. During a water break, school, mostly, but also from working with lots of different people. The woman replied, everyone's body is different, and everyone has different goals. The trick is figuring out what works for each person. By the end of their session, she was exhausted in a way that felt completely different from her usual workouts. Instead of just being tired, she felt accomplished, like she had actually achieved something significant. So what do you think? The woman asked as they were cooling down. She had to admit, it had been the best workout she'd had in months. It was really good, she said. I can already tell I'm going to be sore tomorrow, but it's a good kind of sore. The woman's face lit up again. Does that mean you might want to do this again? She thought about it for a moment. A few hours ago, this woman had been a scary stranger who was making her life uncomfortable. Now she was someone who had just helped her discover new ways to challenge herself physically. Yeah, she said, surprising herself with how quickly she made the decision. I think I'd like that. Really? The woman asked, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Really? But let's start with a regular schedule. Same time, same place. And no more watching me from a distance. If we're going to do this, we do it properly. The woman nodded eagerly. Absolutely. And I promise, no more weird behavior. I'm really sorry about all that. As they packed up their things, she realized that what had started as one of the most uncomfortable situations of her life had turned into something that might actually be really good for her. Sometimes the best opportunities come from the most unexpected places. 6 months later, she could barely recognize the person she used to be. Standing in front of her bathroom mirror, she could see muscles in her arms and legs that had never been there before. Her posture was better, her energy levels were higher, and she felt stronger than she ever had in her entire life. But the physical changes were just the beginning of her transformation. Her morning alarm went off at 6 a.m., just like it had for over a year, but now she practically jumped out of bed with excitement. Instead of dragging herself to the park because she knew she should exercise, she actually looked forward to her workouts. She couldn't wait to see what new challenges her training partner had planned for the day. The woman who had once been her mysterious observer had become the best workout partner she could have asked for. She was patient when she struggled with new exercises, encouraging when she wanted to give up, and creative enough to keep their sessions interesting and fun. Ready for today's challenge? Her partner asked as she arrived at the park that morning. Always. She replied, and she meant it. The fear and anxiety she used to feel about their encounters had been replaced by genuine excitement and anticipation. Their training sessions had evolved far beyond what either of them had originally imagined. What started as basic fitness coaching had become a comprehensive program that included strength training, flexibility work, endurance challenges, and even some martial arts basics. I have something special planned for today, her partner said. With a mischievous grin, we're going to work on obstacle course training, she laughed. In the park? With what obstacles? You'd be surprised what you can do with benches, trees, and a little creativity, her partner replied. Plus, I may have brought some portable equipment. Over the past 6 months, her partner had invested in all kinds of training gear, resistance bands, suspension trainers, medicine balls, and even some lightweight portable weights. Their workout area had become like a mini outdoor gym. But the equipment wasn't the most important part of their partnership. The most valuable thing was how her partner had helped her understand her own body and what she was capable of achieving. Remember, when you told me you could never do a pull-up, her partner asked as they set up their equipment. That was only 4 months ago, she replied, still amazed by her own progress. And now I can do 10 in a row, she said proudly, and I'm working toward 15. Her partner beamed with pride. That's not just physical strength. That's mental strength too. You've learned to push past the voice in your head that says you can't do something. She had noticed that change in herself too. The confidence she had gained from their training sessions had started affecting other areas of her life. At work, she was more assertive in meetings. In social situations, she felt more comfortable trying new things. Even her family had commented on how different she seemed. I have some news, her partner said as they finished their warm-up routine. I wanted to share it with you first. What kind of news? I'm opening my own training studio, her partner said, practically glowing with excitement. I've saved up enough money, and I found the perfect space downtown. It's small, but it's mine. She felt a surge of pride and happiness for her friend. That's amazing. When did you decide to do this? I've been thinking about it for months. But you're the one who gave me the confidence to actually do it, her partner replied. Working with you showed me that I really can help people achieve their goals. You were my first real success story here in the city. I don't think I was your success story, she said thoughtfully. I think we were each other's success story. Her partner had transformed just as much as she had over the past 6 months. The shy, awkward person who used to watch her from a distance had become a confident, skilled trainer who was about to start her own business. I have a question for you, her partner said. Would you be interested in being my first official client? At the new studio, I know we've been doing this for free, but I'd love to continue working with you in a professional setting. Of course, she replied without hesitation. But I have a condition. What's that? I want to help you get other clients too. I've been telling everyone I know about how much you've helped me, and several of my friends have asked if they could join our sessions. Her partner's eyes widened. Really? People have been asking about me? Are you kidding? Look at me, she said, gesturing to her obviously improved fitness level. Everyone wants to know how this happened. I tell them it's because I found the best trainer in the city. Over the past few months, she had become her partner's unofficial marketing team. She had referred 3 co-workers to neighbors and even her own sister. Her partner now had a waiting list of potential clients. I still can't believe how this all started, her partner said as they began their workout. I was so embarrassed about the whole watching from a distance thing. I thought for sure you'd never want to see me again. Honestly, I'm glad it happened exactly the way it did, she replied. If you had just walked up to me on the first date and introduced yourself, I probably would have said no. I wasn't ready for a training partner then. What changed your mind? Seeing how much you cared, she said simply, even though your approach was unconventional, I could tell that you genuinely wanted to help people improve their lives. That kind of passion is rare. As they worked through their routine, she reflected on how much both of their lives had changed. Her partner had gone from being a struggling trainer with no clients to someone who was about to open her own successful business. She had gone from someone who exercised out of obligation to someone who genuinely loved being active and challenging herself. You know what the best part is, she said as they finished their session. What's that? We're both proof that good things can come from the most unexpected situations. 6 months ago, if someone had told me that the woman who was watching me would become one of my closest friends, I would have thought they were crazy. Her partner smiled. And if someone had told me that my awkward stalking behavior would lead to my dream career, I would have laughed at them. They packed up their equipment together, just like they had done every morning for months. But now, instead of parting ways with polite goodbyes, they made plans to check out the new studio space together over the weekend. As she walked home, she thought about the person she had been 6 months ago, scared, suspicious, and closed off to new possibilities. That person seemed like a stranger now. Sometimes the best changes in life come from the most uncomfortable beginnings. And sometimes the people who challenge us the most are exactly the people we need to meet.